Welcome back to East Barcelona Forest Stage, Friday afternoon. Wanted to give a warm welcome to Corey Petty from Status. Come on up. Yeah. Woo. Thanks, Corey.
Hello, my name is Corey. Today I want to talk about how to ethically build public good infrastructure. I'll start off by giving a small introduction to myself, but not too much because there's not a lot of time. I started back in 2012 or so, studying Bitcoin during my PhD, fell in love with it, then quickly left academia after that to then do consulting in data science, because it wasn't back then, it wasn't really clear how you get a job doing blockchain. And then quickly found Status short after that and have been there for 5 or so years. And for the first 4 years or so, it was all during security. And since then, starting this year, I've been working on trying to focus on building infrastructure and then also the process of building infrastructure. I want to talk about that today. So the key takeaway, if you'd like to walk away now, is building infrastructure for everyone isn't optimized for number go up, which is typically what you hear when if you were to Google blockchain. But it's still worth it. And let's start by talking about what a public good infrastructure is. And I'll start by quoting Paul Samuelson, which is a good which all enjoy in common, in the sense that each individual's consumption of such a good leads to no subtractions from any other individual's consumption of that good. So no zero-sum game situation. You want to build something that's useful for everyone, in a sense that if someone consumes it, they're not taking away from someone else in the process. How you fund these things, how you build these things has been, I guess, a public debate for quite a long time. And here's this other thing I'd like to kind of point out, which I think is incredibly important, especially in the context of digital communications and digital communities and digital infrastructure, is the medium is the message. It's this saying that was coined to talk about or think about how the medium that you use inflicts a bias on the message you're trying to send. So when I say something to someone else, I have some idea that I'd like to portray into the world, and I think about words and I shoot them out, and I hope that that receiver gets the message I was trying to say. In the process of doing this digitally, we then force it through a series of tubes to hopefully the receiver gets it and gets some level of the concept we were trying to portray. And the way the internet is built today, and what we consume for the most part, and in my opinion, the majority of the reason why we're trying to do stuff in Web3, is that we have these incredibly complex social relationships that we have in the real world, and we're using technology that puts it all through a meat grinder and kind of gives you this very mundane experience. We're taking this beautifully complex world that is humans and shoving it through something that can't quite contain it. We're adopting human relationships to a technology, and I think we're trying to fix that. So, Ethereum happened. This is a graphic back when they launched, one of the earlier blog posts that they had to kind of visualize this concept of the Holy Trinity. And that is Ethereum for the execution layer and smart contracts and how you do kind of immutable business logic. You had Swarm, which is a distributed file storage, so you can kind of have strong guarantees on where you're putting this information as opposed to throwing it on S3. And Whisper, which is this ephemeral messaging layer so that you can send very private and secure messages amongst the nodes or participants in this network for communicating about what you're going to be doing on the blockchain. So if you think about what a blockchain actually is in the context of Ethereum, it's usually like the end product of all of the other stuff that you're doing between communication and thinking about it and so on and so forth. And when finally everyone comes to agreement on what they're going to do, you put that on a blockchain so that you have a permanent record that can't be changed. Status, the company that I work for today, bought into this wholly. We love this idea. And we really wanted to be this dApp browser in the bottom, right? We wanted to give people an interface to this beautiful new decentralized web that was brought up that we really, really bought into. So, and we had this concept incredibly early. Right in the white paper, it says, what if we could flatten these roles, these social economic networks? What if what if users of social networks possess the real stake in the networks they participate in? What if we could align incentives for all parties and create a network that naturally promotes behaviors that benefits all participants? That sounds a lot like, how can we enable more public goods? How can we enable things in which the participants that consume services actually help benefit or uphold the service itself? And so we still believe this, and we've been building ever since the beginning in a real way, and I'm going to kind of talk you through a whole process of our attempts to build this way in a very principled manner. And so our principles guide us in how we design and build, and you can look at the principles we all agreed upon. We all signed a contract, not a contract, but a message saying that we do agree with these things and we debate. And what's nice about this is that if we come up with a new feature or idea or a direction to move, we can always look at this and use these as the guiding principles as to why we want to move this direction. Anyone can always come up with an argument as to like why something doesn't work or what should we do about it. But if you don't have these guiding principles to then come to an agreement on this is the right way to go because this is the way we set out to go in the first place, you're just going to keep arguing or build in a completely dumb or useless way. So Status uses Whisper. Status is an app that does private messaging. It's got a wallet and a DApp browser all built in one for your mobile phone. We build hopefully for as resource-restrained devices as possible. And so Whisper is the ephemeral messaging network. And how it deals with anti-spam is proof of work. You have to do some proof of work computation first before you send a message. And so everyone checks that before validating a message and passing it on through this gossip layer network. What this resulted in was dead batteries and hot phones. In the beginning, we literally put a Geth node on a mobile phone and burned them. And then the way messages propagate across the original Whisper is through gossip. And so flooding, I think it was the actual original one, in which I send a node a message, and that node sends that same message to everyone that it knows, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, until you have that message across every participant. We're doing this on phones. And so people were getting on their data plans and then burning through them in a hot minute. And then Discovery v4, which is the way in which you try and find new peers you get on, didn't quite work in like a high churn environment. People walk around with their mobile phones. They go from cell tower to cell tower onto Wi-Fi, and in some cases turn their phone off. And every time they got back on, they had a hard time getting connected to the network, which then moved towards a centralization of like what nodes you look at or what nodes are actually providing a quality service. And we had problems with people getting messages or drop messages or so on and so forth. So like Whisper wasn't cutting it for the environment we wanted to use it for. And it also wasn't getting a lot of development from the original plan for Ethereum. Most of you have probably never heard of it, which means it wasn't getting any resources. So we set out to fix this by adopting it and calling it Waku. And so there's posts on vac.dev. You can go look and see all of this stuff, but I'll talk about kind of quickly how it went. So this first one, Waku v1, was an attempt to patch Whisper. We knew it wasn't going to be permanent, but we wanted to make sure that we could kind of solve those earlier issues that I just talked about in a reasonable way without compromising our principles. We always could have just used any other messaging service that's out there to kind of make number go up, but we decided to stay with our principles. We wanted to take responsibility and apply attention to the required infrastructure and take ownership of it such that we can keep building up the ecosystem the way we thought it should be built. And in order to do this, we needed to do this all in the open. So research, build, publish, everything in the open, and specifically not for ourselves, so for everyone to be used. And the issues here, when you can't see them because the graphic is too transparent, well, you can see it up here, nice. It was spam. We took away proof of work because it was burning phones, basically. And what left was like terrible spam. So if you go into status, you get a lot of spam, and it's an issue. And we could have done a lot of different things to fix this by introducing censorship or blocking IPs or doing all kinds of interesting things to kind of give a better quality of service, but it made a lot of compromises in how we wanted to build. So we continued our plan for building infrastructure in terms of scaling things, and that is the goal to Waku v2. And what that does is it completely takes this patching of Whisper that we initially called Waku and builds it from the ground up on libp2p. And it does it in a modular way so that you can actually have a suite of protocols that allow you to use the appropriate service in the context you're in. And I think that's way more in line with the ideals of the infrastructure required to map technology to social relationships as opposed to the opposite around. I'll get back to that. So Waku V2, I would defer you to Hano, was probably somewhere in this audience, who gave a talk earlier. That's a picture of him doing it, or any of the other team that's here to do this stuff, or just go to our specifications. But modular and open is the keywords I want you to see. I'm running out of time. And it's not just for us. I want to reiterate this. We use it heavily. It was originally designed to fit the goals of what Status is trying to do with its messaging application. But under the hood, Wallet Connect V2 uses this. Anytime you use Wallet Connect to, attach your mobile wallet to a DApp browser on your desktop, it's starting that handshake using a peer-to-peer network that is run openly that anyone can participate in. And another recent application called Railgun for starting to give privacy to marketplaces is using it. And a bunch of other things that we're looking into that aren't ready for announcing or talking about yet, but this has been for everyone, not just for us. Once again, spam's still an issue. We haven't addressed this situation yet, right? We let it scale. We made sure phones didn't burn. We made sure people can use it in reasonably low bandwidth scenarios. And it's gotten tremendously better, like way better, trust me. I wouldn't even use the app until recently, and I've been working there for 5 years. So, spam's still an issue, though. You can still log into a public chat, and if it's a reasonably popular public chat, spam to death. So it's still not quite there. But because we've kept this principal approach and forced ourselves to be creative and think about how we want this internet to be built, we've come up with a new solution. That's called the fruits of the labor, what we call the RLN relay, which stands for rate limiting nullifier relay. So this is a privacy-preserving, spam-protecting messaging network, leveraging zero-knowledge cryptography, Shamir secret sharing, and some economic disincentives. I want to give you try for a quick overview here of how it works, but it's built on top of the relay protocol in Waku 2, which is our the main protocol for how messages get propagated across the network in Waku V2. And it's based on gossip sub in P2P. So imagine people know how to send messages in a network. What we've added is basically we have this membership contract on a blockchain, Ethereum being an obvious one. These are solidity contracts, so EVM standard. But all this thing does is basically give you a member set. It gives you a public key and a stake. So if I would like to participate in a network and I want to relay messages, then I sign up for this thing and I put a stake down. What that stake is, we don't really care. This is agnostic for everybody. And then we create basically a zero-knowledge circuit that allows us to, if someone wants to send a message, they then prove anonymously that they are a participant in this member set without revealing which one they are. And they give a piece of their secret key. Basically, it's a calculation of the current epoch and their private key for sake of ease here. So every single epoch, you can spend X amount of messages. In the event that you do X+1 messages, you reveal just enough information for anyone to see that, acknowledge that you're spamming, and then reconstruct your private key and take your money. So it's a way for you to have a very, very clear way of identifying how many messages should be going through this network at any given time by any individual participant. And if someone oversteps that boundary, you can remove them from the network and gain money from it without ever revealing who that person is. And it was a way for us to come up with a way to deal with spam, at least reasonably deal with spam, so you can't overdo the network and remove people from it, and give people a reward for actually actively trying to do this and make the network more healthy. You can find the specifications at rfc.vac.dev. We've recently published all these things on archive because we want everyone to understand them. We want people to give criticism and also help us improve these things so we can make them scale and work better in better environments. And we heavily invite you to go play with it. If you've been in this innovation center over here during the conference, you would have seen the privacy and scalability exploration group for the Ethereum Foundation are currently actually playing with testnets on this stuff, but we want to invite anyone to do it and give us feedback. So I'd like to wrap up with some of the things I think are the most important thing to take away from. I just wanted to give you an idea of our experience with trying to build infrastructure, and that principles are a priority. We could have, at any given point, just capitulated and tried to make our user base happy at this specific time by compromising on our principles to do so, and we refuse to do that. In order for us to get to the point where we'd like to be, we have to make sure that we're building in a direction that moves towards that and not just trying to capitulate and make someone happy for the short term. You need to publish openly, implement, and iterate actively. And that's the process that we've had, is that we talk about what we want to do and how we think we're going to do it. We try it out, find the problems, and iterate on it continuously, from Whisper to Waku V2, and now having more advanced solutions for some problems like spam with RLN. I think it's important to think about using old tools leads to old things. And if we're trying to make something new, we need to think about new things. And I've seen throughout the course of my time in the entire blockchain industry, a movement towards using a bunch of old things to just try and be successful or sell or do something, which I don't think is ever going to actually make any difference. And a lot of you here, I believe, agree with me. It is cumbersome, it is painful, but you need to have patience because there's quite a bit of fruit to be born, in my opinion. And finally, try to conform technology to relationships instead of the opposite way around. Like, we don't want to be this meat grinder of human relationship and pump out a bunch of things that isn't really interesting for digital communities. And what we're trying to do here is exactly that. So if you watched Jared's talk the first day, I stole this slide for him. We are actively building more than just messaging. Messaging is the thing that we're pushing out currently, but we're trying to build the self-sovereign stack, and how we build it is very important to us. If you're interested in these things, you can talk to me, because we're hiring, and here's a logo or a QR code that will point you in the direction of talking to us, or here for that matter. Thank you. I can't see because of lights, but I have a few minutes for questions if you have them. You can yell at me, I guess.
Can you explain how the business model work?
Good one. Yeah, so we were an early ICO, one of the earliest ones, and luckily that allowed us to fund a tremendous amount of development for a long period of time. So I would say we are in a very wonderful position to be able to do this at a large capacity because we're well funded, and I believe we were very good custodians of those funds. In my opinion, how you build infrastructure generally so that you can be worthwhile and sustainable is that you build as agnostically as you possibly can. Like for instance, our specifications are not requiring you to use S&T, right? So you build specifications that are useful for the entire ecosystem as much as you can, and then you pull those back in an opinionated way for a certain business case, right? So now we pull back how we use Waku V2 to make status really good, and hopefully in the event that we make status really good, S&T may go up in the event that that's the right thing to do. But like, you build for the open and you pull back a more opinionated view of how you think it should be used, and particular for your own business case. So you need a good business case. But what that also does is allows people to, it guarantees that if what you build is successful, but you made a bad business case, that the idea doesn't die. Because networks are, by their very nature, like if you tokenize a network, that is an isolated thing. And if it dies, you don't want to like remove all of the great ideas and work and research associated with it if token goes down and no one cares anymore, right? So like, in my opinion, sustainably doing this is building for the open, making a bet that you think the right way to do it is this, and hopefully that's true. Okay, thanks.